Chapter 2. The mystery, the importance of, and the order of things in marriage. God's way. In the beginning. We read that in the beginning, God formed all living things, man and beast, from the dust of the earth. Everything that has breath, God formed from the dust or ground. But when it came to woman, the wife of man, God in his infinite wisdom and for his purpose, caused a deep sleep upon the man and took a part of him, that is of the man, to form a wife for him. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Genesis chapter 2 verse 7. Out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the air, and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. And whatever Adam called each living creature, that was its name. Genesis chapter 2 verse 19. But God saw that it was not good for the man he created to be alone. Hence, he decided to give Adam a helper comparable to him. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Then the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. Genesis chapter 2, verses 21 to 22. Why did God have to undertake such difficult and complicated process to make the woman? He made man and every beast from the ground and dust. But when it came to a woman, the all-knowing God went through all sorts of complications and problems to form a woman from the rib of a man. That is indeed an obvious and unambiguous overemphasis of a crucial point. God made this indisputable and incontrovertible statement to demonstrate the imperative sacredness and oneness in a marriage union he has formed for his purpose. He could have formed a woman through the same way that he used to create man and the beasts. He wanted from the beginning to show us, for avoidance of ambiguity or confusion, that his overriding intent is for his sacred union to remain ever indivisible, inviolable, and perfect in one, that is, in love. Contrary to selfish interpretations in certain quarters, God, in his infinite wisdom, method, and manner, did not intend to ascribe and relegate to a woman an unfair position of inferiority. God never enshrines inferiority in his order, but certainly God knew why he did what he did. For he knew from the beginning that people, in the exercise of their lustful and evil hardened hearts, would stop at nothing to ensure they thwart and frustrate God's original purpose for their own hurt. Humans, the most intelligent creation of God, have always nurtured and cherished rebellion against God. Man is the only creature who refuses to abide with the sole purpose or duty God created him for, to fear and obey him for his own good. See Deuteronomy chapter 5 verse 29, chapter 10 verse 12 and 13, Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 13, Isaiah chapter 1 verses 2 and 3, Matthew chapter 6 verse 33. It is like God was saying that people would not understand why and what he was doing by creating the woman that way. And why did he do that? As it is written, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Genesis chapter 2 verse 24. One flesh. The biggest problem in this world, even among Christians and respective ministers of the gospel, is lack of understanding of what this oneness is all about. When God says, "They shall become one flesh," oneness is godly, and the perfection of oneness is love for God and others. A marriage devoid of oneness is not of Christ. The Lord's Prayer for his disciples that they might be one, as evidence to the world of their fellowship with him. See John chapter 17, verses 21 to 23. As it is written, "And the glory which you gave me I have given them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, and that the world may know that you have sent me, and have loved them as you have loved me." John chapter 17, verses 22 and 23. Again, "But above all these things put on love, which is the bond of perfection." Colossians chapter 3, verse 14. Do we comprehend what it means to be one flesh? And many have gone through life and marriage without comprehending what it means to be one. When God says the two, husband and wife, shall be one flesh, what does that mean? Something that is one indivisible unit for any and all purposes. It is my prayer that the next chapter will bring clarity to the spiritual meaning of oneness to the glory of God. Leaving. Before even going further into the issue of oneness, let us look at this other mystery. Why did God say the man shall leave his father and mother? I know that in many cultures, the woman leaves her father and mother and joins the man physically. The Lord is not talking merely about physical separation or union. Normally and traditionally, if we look at this all the way from Genesis in the Bible, in almost all cases, the sons, that is the men, remain in the families and the wives come to join them. This practice is still to a greater extent generally the case to this day. Leaving a father and mother in a spiritual context is a spiritual separation. Something spiritual has happened here. Beside God, there is nobody else that should ever come between a husband or a wife in each person's life. In other words, that attachment is a spiritual thing, and only God can take precedence. Nobody else can and should. Do you know that many of the divisions and frictions in marriages have arisen from papa and mama and the involvement of relations, even cousins? When one is getting married in some cases, you will find so many people, some coming from the woodwork, as it were, offering their advice and counsel, most of which may be negative, thereby interfering with and disrupting the marriage. It is almost as if they are determined, in some cases, to sabotage and destroy the marriage. Relations may rally around and accuse the wife of so many things, until you establish to the extended family that as a Christian or child of God, you are determined that your marriage will stand strictly on God's platform, doctrine, and tradition. They will not stop meddling with your marriage. They will not go away. They will continue to interfere. We must be mindful of the destructive devices of the devil and the obvious fact that he roams around looking for whom to devour. This separation is spiritual and does not in any way mean that you will have nothing to do with your family or relations. However, it still remains that there should not be anything that will come first and before you and your spouse except God. The first person in your life should be God, and the next, your husband or spouse, your wife for the man. Anything or anyone else you allow to come in between to sow discord or conflict violates what God is saying here. Any Christian marriage which is established and rooted on tradition and culture of the world, contrary to the gospel and doctrine of Christ, will not stand. That is why God said the man should leave spiritually and then cleave to his wife. Adam recognized and embraced this godly doctrine from the very moment he set his eyes on Eve, his wife. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." Genesis chapter 2, verse 23. This is a prevalent problem. This is the main angle where most of us have problems. Bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. It is in this matter of oneness that most marriages fail. The indivisibility of that which is not to be violated. The sacredness and sanctity of marriage. Human beings, ordinarily, are like mere animals. All they strive to do is to satisfy themselves in their lusts for worldly things. They even glory and try to relish in their new conquests. They always have another ground to conquer, never ever satisfied. They set out to seek a new pasture somewhere to reach. Bottomless pit, indeed. Appetite that is never satisfied. As is written by the wise preacher, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they shall return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is what will be, and there is nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 7 to 9. And that is man, almost always void. Every human being without the Spirit of God, the Spirit of total transformation, is void. Just like in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. Just about everyone who is married, except that marriage is anchored on the Lord, does not understand the mystery of marriage. What this oneness, this uniqueness, and this sanctity of marriage is all about. And that is why, as human beings, we go about establishing our own righteousness and holiness. We hear what God has said, and we question. After all, who can do it the way God has said? We develop a lazy mind of progression, and then we believe that no matter how we go about it, God will understand and eventually have mercy and forgive us. As we have read earlier, the Ancient of Days does not change, and there is no partiality with him. That is why God sent his only begotten Son to show us the way. And to those who truly believe in him, he has given them not only the power to become God's children, but to understand the mysteries of his kingdom. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name. John chapter 1, verse 12. Because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. Matthew chapter 13, verse 11. For without spiritual understanding, we will not be established as children of God. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And in all your getting, get understanding. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. Through wisdom, a house is built, and by understanding, it is established. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 3.